evening. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us on a Thursday night. Welcome to the first session of the Pacific Division Sheltering Capacity Building Series. There will be a weekly session. It will either be on a weekday or the weekends. This meeting will also be recorded and sent out afterwards. My name is Yiwei Chen. I'm a volunteer. I joined the Red Cross in 2009. I am currently the Mass Care Regional Program Lead in Los Angeles, and I'll be your facilitator throughout this whole series. If you can type your name in the chat so we can know your name and the region you're from, and we can say hi to each other. Please mute your microphone and turn off your video when you're not speaking. Raise your hand if you have any questions, or you can simply type in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat as well. I've turned on the caption transcription on this as well, so you're able to see the transcript. So the goal for this capacity building series is for us to build our workforce confidence, is to provide any practical tips for the mass care operations, to provide a collaborative environment for all of us to communicate, to share our ideas, to share our goals together. I want to thank all of the division leaderships, Ty, Luke, Aaron, Chuck, Laura, the whole entire Pacific Division's regional disaster officers for spreading the word. Our wonderful and lovely disaster workforce engagement team, our mass care leads, our DPX team, all the function managers for announcing it during all your meetings. I especially want to thank Sherry Lewis from Goat Country to walk me through for how to set up a presentation series. I am extremely excited for this series, and I'm so happy so many of you can join us tonight. Without further ado, please welcome Jodie Wallace and Roxanne Morse for our first presentation. Jodie and Roxanne, it's all yours.
Great,
no
great. Well,
pressure.
what a lovely introduction. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And we are really happy to be here, and I'm using air quotes, to share with you something that Jodie and I are very passionate about, and that's sharing the wonderful experience of deployment with new shelter workers, new service associates. And I know that in our experience, there are always tips and tricks that you learn while on deployment that have just been so beneficial for future deployments. And so I think it was last year that Jodie and I, we got together and we thought, hey, what if we actually do a class where we can share some of this wisdom and that it will be a companion, it'll accompany all of the other coursework that we take to get our gaps in sheltering. And so this class is basically this is just a really great way just to summarize and hopefully have a really good discussion with folks that maybe are new to deploying and new to shelter work, and really just share as much information and wisdom as possible. So just some light housekeeping. This was already mentioned earlier. Just please use the chat for any questions. And also please include just a little bit about yourself in the chat so that we know we could get a good sense of the level of experience of our audience tonight. Jodie, if you want to introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody. Wow, seeing the list of participants on this is so encouraging. Like Roxanne said, you know, we really are passionate about what we do in sheltering, and we know that the more trained and the more confident our service associates are, the more they're going to want to continue to deploy, the more capable they are at helping us to provide the best service that we can to our clients. So we were both really excited to be part of this. So to start, so my name is Jodie Wallace, and I am out of the San Jose chapter in Santa Clara County in California. And I have been a Red Cross volunteer since 2005. I can remember sitting on my couch watching when Hurricane Katrina hit and just, you know, being devastated and wondering what, you know, if anything I could do to make a difference and to help out. And the Red Cross actually within a couple days had started making announcements that they were looking for new volunteers. So I called right then, signed up, went in, took my classes, and deployed to Texas and Louisiana. And I had never looked back. So I actually, let's see, had my 16th anniversary in this past September. And I have been out on 50 plus deployments. My heart belongs to sheltering no matter what other positions I do. I always come back to that. That is where I think, you know, we have the biggest impact. We make the biggest difference. And that really is what we're known for. So again, as Roxanne said, thank you guys for joining us this evening.
Yeah, it's your origin story, so to speak, is very similar to mine. So my name is Roxanne Morse, and I'm the person making the weird face on the right in the photo. And I basically started my Red Cross journey started with the Santa Rosa wildfires, and very similar actually to Jodie's experience is that I was seeing this disaster unfold, and I felt compelled to do something, and so I figured out a way to sign up and take the crash course in sheltering and get and was basically signed on as an event-based volunteer, and then I've been hooked ever since. And like Jodie, sheltering is definitely my bag. There's nothing else quite like it. And the only thing I could say is that for those of us that are hooked, it's we're kind of hooked for life. There's nothing else quite like it. There's nothing quite as gratifying as the work that you do in a shelter. And so my experience is primarily around the West Coast wildfires. And in non-deployment times, I am the mass care coordinator for Marin County. So that's kind of what I do off times. So let's start with our learning objective. How to be a great shelter service associate. It's a simple question, but as with a lot of simple questions, it's there's really no simple answer. So what we feel, and I think it could be divided up in two different ways, is that a great service associate, shelter service associate, is it can be divided in two different ways. First of all, you want to have a rewarding personal experience during deployment. And then secondly, but also equal, is that we really want to provide high quality and caring service for our clients. Like those two things are very important. One, because we want you to have a good experience, because we want you to come back. We want you to build that skill set and hopefully, you know, want to promote and deploy farther and go bigger and you know, realize any dreams and potential that you could have. And at the end of the day, what all this is being there for our clients, being there for those folks that are in need. So, first question, why would anyone want to volunteer in a shelter? And I touched upon this briefly. And we, in the nonprofit world and volunteer world, you meet all different types of volunteers. But I'll say this: there is a certain type of person, there's a certain type of energy, a certain just personality that just loves sheltering, and I cannot describe it, but you definitely know when you meet a fellow shelter enthusiast, and it's great. There's just like an untapped, unspoken energy with pretty much everything that they say and do. It's really interesting. So My first question to the group, and I would love just some folks just to give a couple answers in the chat. Why is it important to have a rewarding personal experience? And someone could just kind of share with. I can't see the chat screen, so someone will have to kind of read it out loud.
I'm monitoring the chat. I haven't
Okay.
seen answers yet.
Mm.
Let's see if we have any takers for this. Okay, so we have someone said, Willem Keith from LA said, so you can come back and do it again.
Yeah.
We have Mike is saying that to stay positive for the clients. Jean Ross will want to do it again. We have so many of will want to do it again. And Rob said, the joy of knowing I've helped.
Love that.
Michael says, so that I will want to do it again. Erica said, shelter workers are in a better place to help clients. It's important to feel like you're making a difference and part of the team. Alex Flatley says psychology of volunteerism. And Barb said the clients will feel helped. Margie says, so we spread the word to other potential volunteers. And that's one of the reasons that we're doing this series is we want everyone to have a good experience. We also want our clients to have a good experience in their most difficult times.
That's great answers.
And having a satisfying experience helps re-energizing you. Sherry said to encourage one another through supporting others, live the Red Cross mission. Sherry, thank you so much for joining us because it makes me feel so good. Douglas said, how you feel about the experience comes through the client and demonstrate the authenticity. Authenticity. Oh my God, I can't even pronounce this word. And of course, being part of the community.
That's great. Thank you. Those are amazing answers. And that's exactly right. It's so important, and it has a cascading effect. It has a ripple effect, right, with those around you and those that you're that you are serving, basically. So yeah, excellent answers. So my next question to the group, and this is, I think, one of my favorites. How would you envision a perfect deployment experience? And you could just read a few.
Right.
It's my favorite. It's my favorite question to ask folks.
We're gonna give folks several minutes just to type, or several seconds. So Alex said hot, and I'm assuming that hot is noting the quote unquote perfect deployment. Working with you, Cynthia said, working with you is the perfect deployment experience.
Aw.
Collaborate with other helpers, well organized and smooth running, making new friendships, Laura said. Successfully meeting needs as best as you can. So I'm going to read several more later on, but now back to you.
Great. Yeah, those are excellent answers, and it's such a good thought experiment that to have a rewarding experience, do you need a perfect deployment? And I really love the answers that folks gave, because it's not such like an easy thing to answer, but in reality, perfect deployments do not exist. But there are perfect moments that will change you forever. And the example that I have is when I was deployed up in Chico for the Paradise Fires, and it was a really tough deployment. It was a really tough assignment, but it was probably one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had in my life. And I think there's one or two people in this group tonight, I think, that were there at that particular shelter with me. It was in those challenging times that you really do form these bonds with people that will last a lifetime. A rewarding personal experience. How is this achieved? And I'd like to introduce the group to one of our animal mascots in sheltering. This is called a kawaka. It is reputed to be the most friendliest animal in the animal kingdom. So how is this achieved? So basically, we have a few things for you to consider. First and foremost, really understand the expectations for your assignment, meaning you really want to understand what you're being asked to do. You want to understand the parameters of it and the deliverables that you may be expected to perform. So what would be your responsibilities? And then secondly, manage your expectations and really make sure that those are in line with what you're going to be going into. So the best example I can the best example I have is being assigned to night shift. If you are a shelter worker and you're going to be deployed, there is a good possibility that you will be on night shift. And some people like night shift. Jodie actually loves night shift. I've had great experiences on night shift, but not everybody likes night shift. Just because we don't like it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. So, it could happen. You're going to be a night shift, yes. The weather can be really. It could be unagreeable. It could be hot. It could be cold. It could be neither. All those things. Third, definitely leave your assumptions and ego at home. Come with an open mind, ready to learn, ready to, be open to new experiences. And then, of course, really importantly, practice self-care. And there is a tendency for folks to become so consumed and so focused on taking care of others that we forget to take care of ourselves. And by having good self-care habits in place and force yourself to do them, it will allow you to take care of others in the best way possible. So, for example, I always make sure that I'm drinking enough water. I wear good shoes. I really try to make myself eat somewhat regularly. But these things are really important. Another thing is to take initiative and ask questions. Be in charge of your own education and understanding. And also look for opportunity. There's opportunity everywhere while you're on deployment to learn a new skill set, to make new acquaintances, to network in other territories and other states. And then, of course, always remember, the animal mascot, be like the quokka, make friends wherever you go. So I would like to turn this over. Let's see here, sorry. So I would like to switch gears a little bit and talk about the second point about high quality and caring service to our clients. And we touched upon this briefly, but I'll ask the group another question. Why is this important?
Okay, we'll give a few seconds for people to type. Okay, Michael said that's the main reason we're there.
Mm-hmm.
It's why we're there. It's our mission. Clients experiencing one of the worst times of their lives. If their needs are met, they will be happier. It is our mission. So the consensus are, it is what we do. It is our mission. We also have a hand raised. MN guest, your hand is raised. Do you want to come off mute?
My name is Michaela, and I think the most important thing is that they feel supported. So if we do our job, they don't, because they already are in stress and panic. So if we do our job, at least we can help. I don't know if I answered. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great answer. Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
We have many more in the chat. Basically, we're saying that a high quality services allows clients to know that we actually care and we want to help them on their recovery road.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, that's exactly right. So, how I'd like to think about this is thinking about basic human needs during a disaster. And so I love this graphic because you have, I mean, everyone needs food, water, shelter, safety, and friends and family support. And all of this, all of these things a client needs. And all of these things are provided through the larger part of opening a shelter. And these things, having access to these things becomes even more important with a disaster. And so it's up to us in providing that good, high quality service to our clients to provide these things, but in the best possible and the most compassionate way. Sorry, let's see here. So let's look at this slide. This is one of my favorite things. So the luxury personal space can take many forms. I like this picture because to me, I really like a lot of like what this captures in terms of, you know, it looks like a nice soft bed. There's a dog on it, which I love animals. There's windows and light and plants and fuzzy things and probably a book somewhere. So this kind of captures like my idea of, you know, a great personal space. But if you've ever worked in a shelter, or perhaps you have not deployed in person yet, or perhaps you have only deployed in a non-congregate setting, which is where clients were being sheltered in hotel rooms, like during the upswing of COVID. Perhaps you haven't seen a congregate shelter. So congregate shelter, it's really hard. You know, our clients, they don't have the comforts of home. And so it's up to us to help them with all of their needs, like while they're there. And it's difficult, but it's not impossible to do. And the Red Cross has a reputation of really being there for clients and providing them with everything that they need to take those next steps. And so I would like to turn it over to Jodie, who is going to share with you tips and tricks for making this possible.
Thank you. So as Roxanne pointed out very eloquently, people who love sheltering are definitely a special breed. Those of us who stick with it and really enjoy it. And sheltering is not for everybody. There are certain qualities that you will find in someone who really is passionate about sheltering. There's a lot of empathy, a lot of compassion. You know, those are traits that somebody who works in logistics in the warehouse doesn't probably equate to quite the same way. So we are there to take care of clients, to offer comfort as well as the basics of sheltering and feeding. And, you know, it's just when you make that connection with clients, it's indescribable. Some of these memories are people that you will meet and you will take with you forever, and you will always remember that. And there are definitely certain deployments that will stand out for you a lot. I was in Santa Barbara about 4 years ago, and the last night, as I was helping to clean up from dinner, I turned around and there were a bunch of clients, and they had a balloon and a card, and they had bought a dessert. And I was very confused because I said, you know, we're the Red Cross. We do things and give for you. You know, we're not looking for clients to do for us. And I had several of the people, including, you know, these big burly bikers, who came up and said, you guys have made such a difference. You have no idea. We really appreciate it, and we're really sorry to see you go. Those are the moments that you go, this is why I do this, right? These are the things that you take home with you and you remember. Okay, so group question. So how do we achieve high quality and caring services to our clients? How about we'll give you guys a minute or two to put some answers in the chat before we proceed. So how do we provide that high quality and caring service that our clients have come to expect from us?
So Scott from Montana and Idaho said, must have compassion and caring. Biggest reward is when you spend time with them that lost everything begin to smile again. Margie said, listen to their stories. Hillary said, listen. And we have listening, no ask about and what their needs, and try to learn their names, make it personal. To have compassion, a warm welcome, meet clients' needs given the situations, provide safety and it provides safety conditions, and also prepare the food. Listen to their needs, working towards protocol ideas, be in the moment with the clients. We have so many good answers in the chat.
These are some fabulous answers, and they are right on the point. So when Roxanne and I had talked about putting this together, the objective really because, you know, even if you're going through the shelters and the fundamental classes, they give you a lot of the basics, but what you don't have really are what are useful tips that I can walk into my first deployment with, things that I can actually do and remember that will help me. So that's exactly what we're trying to do here. So we're going to give you some tips that you can put in your back pocket and take with you and for your first deployments. Okay. This is one of my very personal favorites. Learning clients' names is very important to helping us establish those relationships that we want to nurture. Now, obviously, if you are in a large shelter with 100 or 500 clients, that's not going to be possible to learn everybody's name. But the key is if you can learn a few clients' names, and when you are interacting with them and you're using their names, so we are acknowledging that this person is more than just a statistic. Also, what that does is other people will realize, family, friends, and other clients, that you know this person, right? You're using their name, you're acknowledging who this is. And that really goes far. We want to build rapport with our clients. We want to build trust with our clients. We want cooperation. So if we need their help with something down the road, I'm really short, so I'm always hitting up clients. Could you please help me, get the trash bag with this? We're working on establishing those relationships. One of the things that I find is that children and adults are pretty apt to come and talk with you and have conversations, but a lot of times we will find that the teenagers, they may keep to themselves. They may be off in a corner. They're kind of plugged in and tuned out, right? They're on their phone or their iPad. So it's really important that we make the time and we seek out to check on those teenagers. And a good shelter associate, we're the eyes and the ears for the supervisor and the shelter manager, because you're the person really that is interacting the most with the clients. And that means you're the person who can feel things out and go, something feels off, right? Maybe we need to have somebody from health services or mental health have a conversation with this teenager, because they're not going to be forthcoming to you, right? So again, I find that by learning their names and addressing the kids by name, it definitely helps to build that relationship as well. Next slide, please. Registration desk. So when you walk into a shelter, the registration desk is really the first thing that you see. And most people look at it and go, okay, well, paperwork, right? This is where the clients register. This is where they sign in and they sign out. And that is very true. But the people that are sitting at that registration desk, they truly are the guardians of our clients' privacy and safety. And that is something that we hold near and dear. So we want to make sure that the only people that are coming into our shelter are people who belong. When you are a new service associate, it can be a little intimidating to ask someone, hey, who are you? Right? But we need to know these things. In the last couple of years, particularly in some of our fires, they have turned more to providing colored wristbands so that we can see somebody with a wristband and go, oh, this is an inside client, or another color wristband. Oh, this client is somebody who's outside and registered with us, right? So that has started to help us being able to identify people without a wristband. Who are they? Do they belong? And it's really important to always ask them, as long as we do something respectfully, right? Especially if you have not worked the registration desk before, right? You might not realize that this is a client, but it's important to always ask. And if you're not sure if someone belongs there or not, make sure, ask your supervisor, tell that person, hey, could you just stay here 1 minute? I promise I will be right back. So for the most part, people in the media are very honest and forthcoming about who they are and why they're there. But I have been at shelters a couple times to where reporters have sort of tried to sneak by the registration desk in order to go in and have conversations with the clients, which absolutely it does not work that way. So we need to be able to say, hi, can I help you? I haven't seen you before. And then it may be, oh, I'm sorry, I'm a reporter with blah, blah, blah. Right? Oh, not a problem. Could you just hang tight? I'm just going to grab my supervisor. Right? So it's really important that we want to make sure that we only let people who belong in the shelter. The other thing that goes along with that is that in times of disaster, there's a lot of chaos, especially the first few days, and the shelter is getting set up and established, and we're trying to get things going the right way. So it gets very chaotic. We also want to make sure that if somebody comes in and says, oh, I'm looking for my mother, sister, brother, boyfriend, whatever, we do not give that information out to people. We can say, you know what, I am happy to take your name and phone number, right? And we do that. But otherwise, I don't know. I can't help you. And that's very acceptable. All right. So again, when you're first starting off doing this, some of these conversations may feel a little intimidating. You're talking to someone you don't know. You haven't had this situation to have this conversation before. Grab your supervisor. Let them help you out. The other thing about the registration desk is we want to encourage clients' good habits. The importance of making sure everybody signs in when they come to the shelter, sign out when they leave. This is important because if something happens and we have to do an evacuation of a shelter, we need to have an accurate count of who actually is there so that we can ensure we have everybody. Also, just schedules. Hey, these are when we're going to be having meals. We want to make sure that people are aware of what's happening. So the registration desk offers a lot of additional service besides just signing people in, right? We're making sure that only the people that belong there are there. People may walk in from the community with questions. So there's a lot of functions that happen at this station. Next slide, please. Very important. It's a right to not know the answer, And it is absolutely all right to tell a client, you know what, I don't know, but let me find out and get back to you. The worst thing that we can do is to provide inaccurate information to a client. And sometimes in the heat of the moment, I've seen people pop off with an answer that to them was not a big deal, but it may come back down the line. The client comes up to you and says, well, but so-and-so told me this. So it's always important that we provide clear information and correct information to a client. So, and again, people are happy to wait for you to come back to them if you say, I don't know, but let me find that out. The other thing about that is that you may have gone to your supervisor or your shelter manager and asked that question, and they said, hey, let me get back to you in a minute. If you don't hear something, an hour later, follow up, because your supervisors and particularly the shelter managers, there's so much going on that they are overseeing that they probably just forgot that they owed you an answer. All right. So your responsibility is to go back and say, hey, I still need an answer so that I can go back to Mrs. Jones. Clients get really frustrated when they feel that we have forgotten them. And there is nothing worse to me than I've gone into work in a shelter and someone's come up and said, hey, is so-and-so here? And I will go, oh, I'm sorry, he went home. But he was helping me work on this problem, right? And so now I have to start from scratch. That's very frustrating. So if your deployment has finished and you know that you're going home and there is still a question or an issue that the client is waiting for, talk to the supervisor, talk to your shelter manager and say, hey, I still have to get back to Mr. Smith with this information. Can you please make sure that somebody does that? Right? These types of things, this is how we build our trust with our clients. We follow up on it and we follow through. Closing the loop of information with our clients, with our supervisors is very, very important. And it's part of what makes things work or not.
Jodie, we have a question in the chat. The question is, how is the communication system with a supervisor? Is it walkie-talkie, or you're just going to walk around, find each other? And are we allowed to use our mobile phones during the shelter?
I'm sorry, you cut out. One more time.
So the question is, how do we communicate with our supervisors when we're in the shelter? Do we use walkie-talkie? Do we call them? Do we just walk around to find them? And are we allowed to use our cell phones in the shelter?
Okay, so if you are a shelter service associate, your supervisor will be in the shelter with you as well as the shelter manager. Okay, so go up to somebody in person. To me is always the best way. If I've got a very large shelter that I'm handling, I tell people, hey, you know what, drop me a quick text, or you can give me a phone call as well. But if you're in a small enough shelter, go up to them and have that face-to-face conversation. That way, nothing gets lost in communication that way. If you're
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I would say, Jodie, like adding on to that, like whenever you're in the shelter that you're assigned, definitely you could use your mobile phone and like immediately add to your contacts the phone numbers of everyone on your team and the shelter manager and the shelter supervisor. That way, you'll be able to have that. You'll be able to call them or text them and not have to try and figure out like what their number is. So.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that. Very, very important. Almost. Okay.
No, sorry. It's this. Sorry.
You're just trying to trick me.
I get so excited. I just get so excited.
All right. So we in the Red Cross, we count a lot of things and we count them a lot. And we track items on a daily basis. That could be clients, that could be cots, that could be meals. But this is really important, and we want to always make sure that we are reporting accurate numbers. The reason that this really makes a difference and is so important is that, one, we need to be able to make sure that we are forecasting correctly and that we are anticipating the needs. So if we don't have an accurate night count and we don't know that we received additional clients, how are we supposed to make sure that we are providing the correct number of meals that we need? Also, if I've only got 4 blankets left, and I haven't ordered anything because I didn't know I only had 4, and I have a family of 6 people come in, I'm not prepared. I would rather have a little too much inventory available than not enough, right? So things that we count, cots and blankets and comfort kits and meals, these things are very important to make sure that we don't get caught short. The other thing is, if you've ever listened to the media and they talk about the American Red Cross has served 3,000 meals yesterday, or the American Red Cross is housing 200 clients, that information shelters provide up to headquarters, and that information is shared within the communities, within the media, within our partners, right? So we want to make sure that we are providing accurate information at all times. So we count these things every single day because things change from shift to shift, from day to day. And again, as I kind of noted, right, we count clients, meals, snacks, water, cots, pretty much everything. And so making sure that we are maintaining a good inventory so we are never caught unprepared is very important. Next. One of our favorites, Roxanne and I were laughing about this today. And we both do this. So it's really easy to say, oh yeah, I'm going to go get this information and I'm going to bring it back to you. And then I'm walking to the other side of the shelter and a client sidetracks me and I totally forget what I had started to do. It's really important. Always carry a pen and a small notebook on you so that you can make notes, right? Maybe you're doing an inventory count. Maybe your supervisor has asked you to take care of something. Maybe we've got upcoming events. We want to be able to keep track of everything that we need to report on because we need to make sure that we are closing the loops. If your supervisor says, hey, can you talk to Mrs. So-and-so about this situation? A good supervisor shouldn't have to chase you down for the information back. You should have that in your notebook. Okay, I need to talk to Mrs. Jones. Once you have talked to her, you're sharing that information, you're marking it off. So you have closed that loop. That's one of the areas that we get ourselves into trouble a lot is we forget. Another way, Roxanne and I were both saying what we do is set alarms, right? I know, I've got the memory of a goldfish. So if I have to let my supervisor know my inventory, right, by a certain time, I make sure I set an alarm. So 15 minutes before it is due, I'm checking on it. I am sending that information. Okay, and sometimes depending on what job we're doing, we may have 4, 5, 6 different alarms set. But the key is you need to make sure that things don't fall between the cracks and things don't get forgotten. And by writing it down, that will help you. One of the other things is that if there's something you're working on and it's not going to be completed the same day, make a note of it on the next page. So when you come in the next morning and you flip open that notebook, oh yeah, I have to confirm this for my supervisor. So whatever you can do to help remind yourself.
That,
Next
and
page.
if I may add, Jodie,
Please.
so in the small notebook kept on you, that it, like, for me personally, if it's actually not physically attached to my person, I will leave it someplace. And I'm typically quite literally like running around the shelter. And so I have been known to actually just have notebooks just like stuffed in my pants, just to like make sure that they're actually there. And the great thing about having a notebook and just writing down everything like throughout the day is that you start to build a record that you can refer back to. And it has, like, for me personally, I've been able to follow up with things. I have been able to go back and look at my notes to help a supervisor or manager out with like an event that happened. And it's a really good habit to get into on deployments. And then the other thing I would say about like setting multiple alarms, and I'm a huge fan of setting alarms for everything. The one caveat is that be mindful of the type of alarms that you set. So if you, true story, I was on night shift and I wanted to set myself an alarm because I had to call headquarters with a number, and I set an alarm to make sure that I didn't forget. And of course, I was in charge of the dorm and everybody was asleep. And of course, my alarm goes off. And then, of course, everybody gets woken up. And so setting multiple alarms is great, but just be mindful of, if you're on night shift, make sure it's on vibrate.
I like that. One other last thing about notebooks, and I learned this the hard way, right? So I've always got a notebook in my pocket, my jeans, or my vest. Don't get rid of any pages out of that until you're home and off the operation. I did that one
even
time.
Then.
Well,
even
I did
then.
that one time, and then there was a question that came back to me about 3 days later. And I realized that I had cleaned out my notebook, gotten rid of stuff, and I didn't have that information. So, fill up the pages and just keep it with you at all times.
Yeah, just hang on to it. Yeah.
Jodie, we have two questions in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Number one is,
I'm sorry, number one is what?
What is a comfort kit?
A comfort kit. So a comfort kit is a small bag that contains an assortment of personal hygiene items. Usually you're looking at a toothbrush, comb, shampoo, toothpaste. So personal hygiene things that somebody can easily carry with them to the bathroom.
Thank you so much. And in the chat, Alex also put a picture of what's in the comfort kit. The second question is, Barb is asking that, are we allowed to volunteer for shelter deployment to find out if this is a good fit for us?
Absolutely. If you're qualified, you have that gap for sheltering, absolutely. And it's important to find the thing that you love. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about cross training and stuff at the end. But I have a really very good friend of mine in the Red Cross, and she thinks I am insane because I absolutely love sheltering, right? And I laugh at her because feeding is her forte. And me, I'm like, nope, that's right. So it's important to find, and there's so many different gaps that you can do, right? So, but I always tell everyone, you need to work a shelter at least once, no matter what, because this is really what we do and what we are known for. And even if you find that sheltering isn't quite your thing, when let's say you're working in the warehouse for logistics, right? You understand how what you are doing works to support the shelter. Or maybe you end up doing external relations, right? Again, You understand how a different function interacts and works with sheltering. Okay.
Thank you, Jodie. We have 10 minutes left.
Okay, next slide.
Okay.
All right, so real quick, so this is just to give you an idea of a daily shelter report, different things that we need to come up with. And on the bottom where it says shelter population, I'm going to go up real quick.
Sorry.
Okay, I just want to point that out. Shelter population is something that we do at night. We split things up demographically by age. This worksheet is a little bit out of date. That's important, as well as new shelter dormitory registrations. So we run 5 o'clock p.m. one day to 5 o'clock p.m. the next day. Again, it's important that we know how many clients and how many new clients that we have, so that we are making sure that we are planning both supplies and meals appropriately. Okay, next. And this just sort of gives you an idea of some of the things that we are counting, right? How many breakfasts did we serve? How many are available for tomorrow? Doesn't count, but how many will be needed tomorrow? Same with cleanup kits or cots and blankets. So again, we just do a lot of counting. Okay. Don't be shy. When you're first deploying, you may be a little hesitant to ask questions, right? Because you're still trying to feel things out. Good shelter supervisors and shelter managers, we want you to be excited. We want you to be engaged. We want you to be cross-trained. We want you to ask a million questions if you've got them, because how else are you going to learn? And just because I'm working in one shelter on this deployment, I'm still a shelter worker at the next deployment, but it's going to be different, right? Every shelter, every deployment has similarities and it has differences as well. So never feel intimidated about asking questions. Okay. What we try and generally do, a good supervisor and shelter manager will come up and say, how's it going? Do you like what you're doing? Do you want to try something else? Right? Again, we want you to try all the functions in a shelter. Sometimes we get really busy and we may forget to approach you. So if you're sitting working registration, and you're going, maybe I want to work in the dormitory. Let your supervisor know, hey, you think I can try this, right? Likewise, if you're working registration and you really love it, and I come up to you and say, hey, how's it going? Would you like to try something new? Feel free to tell me, you know what? I'm really enjoying this. I'd like to stay here, right? We just want to make sure that you really are getting a very good experience, and that when you leave, you will feel that you're going home really understanding how a shelter works. And, if you're looking around, if there's a team member, a supervisor, or another SA, and they really seem to have a handle on things, they seem pretty confident, and they said, yeah, I've deployed 5 times, right? And you'd like to work with them, mention it, right? Again, we want you to have a good experience. We want you to learn. The best way to learn is experiencing it. And we always want to bring those who are coming in behind us with us, right? You're new this time, but somewhere down the road, you're going to be experienced. And that new SA, they're going to need guidance as well. Also, if you know somebody at home from your territory who's got sheltering experience, put their number and their name in your phone in case you have a question, that maybe you are a little hesitant to ask, or if you're just getting started working in a shelter. As you start meeting people, you start making friends. I've got phone numbers and names, and if I've got a question, which I just called somebody when I was in Kentucky recently with a question, right? You start having those contacts that you can call and again, ask questions or suggestions from them. Or even if you just need someone to chat with about your experience, right? So again, Red Cross, you will start having a lot of camaraderie when you start doing this. The more you do it, you start coming across the same people. Next slide. All right, very important, realistic expectations. You need to understand shelters, we work 12-hour days. Now, that does not count getting myself from where I'm sleeping to my shelter, and it doesn't count when I leave the shelter getting back to where I sleep. We generally run 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., occasionally 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Embrace the glory. I love night shift. You know,
it could be great.
I love that. Night shift really offers you something that you don't get on day shift. All right. I have been in shelters where we have had more Red Cross workers standing around during the day than clients. Okay. People may be at work, at school, at their homes, sifting through the debris. They don't necessarily stay in the shelter. If you really want a good experience and get to know your clients, about 5 o'clock p.m. to when we turn off the lights at 10 p.m., that's when they're there. That's when you can have the best conversations, sit down and really talk to people and get to know them the best. Once lights go out, you know, we do housekeeping and then you're on your own. Bring a book, bring a phone, bring your iPad. You're on duty. We're not sleeping at night shift. We're on duty and awake. Again, we are the guardians of our clients, right? But those 5 hours really make a difference, and really you can establish wonderful relationships. Roxanne, I'm going to let her talk a minute about the importance of standby teams.
Yeah. You know, I'll quickly touch on this. So standby teams is something that we utilize in fire country. And it's basically, we were creating these teams that are basically turnkey type teams where they have everything that they need to pop open a shelter. And they're officially deployed on the DR, on the disaster response. And they are basically at the ready. They're like I'd say like they're like Minutemen, so to speak. They are ready to rock in case a fire sparks up and we need to open a shelter in that area. With standby teams, there is the challenge of we need to have them, and so folks will be poised and ready to go, but they may not be seeing any action at times, and that can make things a bit tedious and can be a little tough if you are wanting to deploy and actually be on the front lines and be working with clients and so forth. And so I really do want to stress the importance of these standby teams are very important, and without them, we would not be able to respond as quickly to these fire, like during fire season, as we were able to do. And I think a good SA, I think that there should be, you know, we always want to make sure that we understand the expectations of the job. And sometimes we're going to be in a shelter and working nonstop, and then other times we might be in a standby team and just ready to rock if we need to open a shelter. And it's important to just understand like that expectation.
We have a question in the chat. I'll just fun.
Oh, go ahead.
The question is how do you part of this device?
Oh, sorry, I think you're cutting out.
Yeah, we can't hear you. Try that one again.
How do you?
The question was, how do you become part of a standby team?
Yeah, so I mean, basically it's basically in how you're assigned once you come onto the DR, and each DR has, it really just depends on the level, the severity of the disaster. And a lot of factors that come into place. But sometimes folks are assigned right away to be on a standby team because that's where the need is. And then other times folks may be cycled from a shelter onto a standby team just to kind of rotate volunteers. So it really just depends on the disaster.
The other thing, let me add a quick note. Just because you are headed out to stand up a shelter, there are times that we stand up shelters because we have been told there's a need, but we don't have clients show up, right? So it's all part of being in sheltering, right? So I always tell new people, you know, if we're in a shelter, it's a good exercise. Even if we didn't end up having clients, we've set it up, we've been open for a couple days, and they say, okay, take it down, and we dismantle it. It's the process that we're going through. We know the steps that need to be taken to bring it up, and we know how to take it down. Nothing is ever wasted, all right? If clients come to the shelter, we are there, but sometimes understand there's a situation where you actually have a shelter and you may not see clients.
Yeah,
we do, right? Okay.
Definitely, yeah.
Yep. We do a lot of housekeeping. You may be asked, we mop floors, we sweep, we desanitize, we sanitize tables, chairs, countertops. Actually, this is all stuff we were doing pre-COVID as well. And if we're lucky and there's a janitorial service, sometimes they take care of the bathrooms. If there isn't, we may be taking care of the bathrooms. We may be asking clients to help us clean bathrooms. So there are a lot of activities and housekeeping that go into keeping a shelter clean, which means we're also keeping people from getting sick. You may be asked to assist with handing out meals, cleaning up, again, wiping down tables and chairs when meals are done, handing out snacks and water. We talked about inventory and count, talked about interactions with the clients, and there can be a lot of physical activity. So it's really important to make sure that physically, you know, you can handle 12-hour days, and that you are, if you're asked, hey, I need you to mop those floors, that you physically are able to do that. Also, from a shelter manager perspective, if I ask somebody, hey, you know, I need you to go and sweep out that kitchen, and you're walking by and you see a client that looks like they need someone to talk to, maybe you can tell they're distressed. You know what? That sweeping, it's going to wait until you're done. Sit down, talk to your client, see how they're doing, see what their needs are, right? That is the first and foremost reason that we are there, to offer care and comfort to our clients. Yes, the housekeeping stuff has to be done, but that becomes secondary. Also, weather conditions are really important. Roxanne and I talked about that earlier today. You need to remember, just because you're going out to Texas and it's 90 degrees and it's, you know, 85% humidity, nights cool down fast, right? Or if you're working in a shelter at night, the air conditioning goes on, and the less activity, the colder it is. You always have to make sure that you have packed long pants, closed-toe shoes, and some type of light jacket, because once that weather changes, all right, if you're not dressed appropriately, you're going to definitely have problems. And be aware of the weather conditions as well. Again, sometimes it's very cold, sometimes it's very hot. If we don't have power and you have a CPAP, are you going to be able to be okay for a couple days until we get power? So you need to evaluate the weather conditions before you decide to deploy. You don't want to get there and then find out this isn't going to work. Next slide.
Sorry,
Best
I know that we're running late. We're 4 minutes over already. I do have a hand up. I want to quickly address that hand, and we'll go to the next slide. Marty,
Okay.
you have a hand up? Marty Crane, you want to come off mute?
Hi, this is Marty, and I'm from Calaveras County. And I just wanted to mention, you were talking about the standby on-call teams, like fast track people. Well, in our area, I don't know where everyone is coming from on this call, but in our area, we get an email, we got one today, that asks us, can we respond from between this day and that day? Can we be on call? And it is critically important that if yours is set up where you get that you respond immediately, one way or the other. You can always say, no, I'm not available, but try to say yes to whatever days you can, because the person, when we get the call to respond, and the person that is assigned to pulling people together to respond has to go down a whole list of people because no one responded. He's wasting time, and time saves lives, or wasted time is a real issue. So please, everyone, respond immediately, whether you can respond to and be on call or not. They need to know. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It's I think there are, and I mean that's 100% you're accurate. It's like it's always good to respond, in a timely fashion for those things. The standby teams that we were referring to, at least in this sense, was for folks that were already deployed. And so it's a little bit of a difference in terms of like they are assigned to a disaster response. So they are like there's a disaster that has happened, and that they are assigned to it.
Okay, well,
in that. But I really like the fact that you brought that up, because it is incredibly important, and it definitely has a cascading effect, like into everything. So thank you for sharing that.
Okay, I think we're down to just one or two slides, so we'll go through them real quick. Okay, the best shelter workers, the best volunteers are absolutely those that are willing to take the initiative. Don't wait around for someone to give you a job. If you see something that needs to be handled, do it. Somebody spilt something, wipe it up. If something's dirty, clean it up. A client looks like they need help packing up stuff, right? Part of what we do is, we're there and we're offering a service, and your supervisor and the shelter manager, a lot of times they're handling other things. So as you're walking around, what needs to be done, identify it, handle it. You can let your supervisor know, hey, I helped Mrs. Jones pack up her stuff, right? But you don't have to wait for me to tell you, please do that. As we talked about before, right? If you see somebody in need, take the time. This is really hard place to be for families. A lot of times we've got single moms, they've got multiple kids. You can just read the stress on their face. Grab one of your other shelter team members and say, hey, how about we'll watch the kids? Why don't you go take a break for a few minutes? Sometimes, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, that's all she needs to just take a deep breath and regroup. And I guarantee you will have made such a difference to her. Think like a supervisor, think like a manager. A lot of times, particularly those first few days when things are crazy, we're just trying to get things up and running. We might miss something, right? If you see something, say something, come up to your supervisor or say, hey, we're not doing this. I had this idea. That's not to say we're going to implement it immediately, but it could be something that the shelter manager says, oh, I like that, but we can't do it now, but I'm going to mark this down, right? Every member of the shelter team is responsible for, again, providing the best environment to our clients. So if you have an idea on how to improve something, again, don't be shy, speak up. I think one more. All right.
Yep.
Last thing. This is really, really important for new SAs. When you are out give 100% of yourself, do your absolutely very best when you are there taking care of the clients. Come home feeling that you really accomplished something. Treat everyone like you would want your own family to be treated. But when you leave that deployment, you need to be able to leave all that stuff there, right? You may hear some very sad stories. You may see some things, and they can weigh really heavy on our hearts. But in order for you to be the best that you can be when you are called to deploy the next time, you have to be able to start fresh on every deployment. You can't be carrying around all that baggage with you. And it's really important that you know, if you're struggling with something, maybe there was a conversation that you can't get out of your head from a client. We have disaster mental health people, and they are here to not only take care of our clients, but to take care of our volunteers as well. And I know that new volunteers have a tendency to be a little shy from going to say, to mental health and saying, I'm having a tough time trying to figure out how to process this. But please note, if you need to talk to someone, those conversations are absolutely confidential, and they are there to help make sure that we are the best we can be. So we want to do this again. Okay. And
last one.
Last one. Okay. As we talked about before, the more you know, the more classes you take, the more educated you are, the more valuable you are as a volunteer, right? If you're cross-trained and you can do different functions, that means just because there's a disaster somewhere, sometimes we don't actually need sheltering people, but hey, maybe I have a gap in distribution of emergency supplies, or maybe I have a gap in feeding and they're going to do mobile feeding, right? So, the more education that you have, truly the more valuable you become to the organization and to your regions as well. And especially, out here with our fires, a lot of times we are really shorthanded because we've got so many shelters set up, and where before you would have had somebody specifically with a feeding gap, right? Here's your feeding person, shelter manager. That's not always the case anymore. So being cross-trained and having a gap in both sheltering and a feeding SA absolutely makes you essential, right? Because if we need to handle feeding, you can step up and say, hey, shelter manager, you know what? I've got this. I know how to do feeding. I've taken the classes. Okay. Cute.
But yeah, we just want to thank everyone for attending and all of the great participation and questions and comments and answers and stuff. And again, I always like to end presentations with a kawaka. A good animal mascot. But I know we're a little bit over, so I'm going to unshare my screen. But if anybody has any time for any questions that they may want to ask, Jodie and I are really happy to answer any questions or to talk about any experiences that we might have had.
Thank you so much. Thank you for a great presentation. I don't want to hold anyone any longer. I want to make the announcement, then we'll conclude. Our next meeting is going to be February the 19th. It's a week from today. Well, it's on a Saturday from at 1 o'clock. It's going to be Pacific Standard Time. So we heard a lot of mentioning as, shelter supervisor, shelter manager, site manager. So next session, we're going to talk about what are those and what if you feel promoted, that this is your first deployment, then suddenly you get asked to be a shelter supervisor instead of shelter service associate. So it will be the same link next week, same chat room, same link. This recording will be posted later on into the chat as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Feel free to hang around to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.